And now let's bring some joy into our lives. Our reviewer today for the Book of Joy is Dr. Timothy Johnson. Dr. Johnson is Professor Emeritus and founding member of the Masters of Social Work program at Roberts Wesleyan College and served as its senior faculty member from 1995 to 2009. Some of the courses he taught include social and cultural diversity, justice, values, and ethics, and nonprofit administration and leadership. He was honored by the Rochester Urban League as Teacher of the Year in 2004. Dr. Johnson earned his PhD in African American Studies at Temple University, and he is an active member of Asbury First United Methodist Church. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Johnson today.
Let me say good afternoon to you. Since I did not know what this was going to be like, I've never been to one of these. I didn't have any sense of the audience, the numbers, or any of that kind of thing. And then I walk in and I'm greeted by two friends from church, and then I look around and I keep seeing more friends from church and friends from other places. So it's a wonderful way to be made and to feel comfortable. Thank you for coming out for the review of this book. I'm not sure that I was given one of the easiest books to review because it's not the kind of book like a novel or a straightforward chronology, but I'm going to do my best with it. I am going to start with it this way, and by the way, I promised somebody I would do this, who would ordinarily be here and is looking. Let me begin by saying to you, joy. And you respond, joy. Let's try that a little better. Let's stir up the joy. 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 That's great. Now I'm prepared to move on because you've warmed up the environment. I began that way because at my home church in Philadelphia, the greeting which was used from the pulpit and between the members was this. Every Sunday, and anyone who got up to make an announcement, joy, we are one in the Lord. And however you define the Lord, it's a wonderful uniting greeting to think about the joy and to think about the fact that we are, I see another friend here, that a colleague from Roberts Wesleyan College. You're looking so young and good that I just didn't think it was you, David. Okay, Dave Barnes. So, however we might define God or Lord, this greeting of oneness rooted in the divine is one of the recurring themes in the Book of Joy, which was my privilege to read. But it is the smaller print subscript that is perhaps the most salient and alluring feature of this book about joy. The subscript reads, lasting happiness in a changing world. Lasting happiness in a changing world. And I must admit that the bold letters, joy, and the title, I missed that at first looking at the book, and then I came back to that. And that is the problem. That is the issue. That's the Mount Everest that we attempt to climb in our lives to find lasting joy in lasting happiness in a changing world, particularly since with the electronics that define our lives, the world is so small. And so we're standing on sinking sand, shifting sand. It's always changing. And the difficulty is to find something that is lasting, to find happiness in this era of change when we become anachronisms very, very quickly. I think about when I grew up, and I think about the things that were important to me and how I missed them. I grew up in Philadelphia. I missed the trolley cars. I missed the street hucksters, the markets. They came to our door. I missed going down on the avenue where they sold live chickens, and I'm not that old. But that was a part of the community. I miss the neighborliness there. There's so much that I miss, and of course, the things that I miss I try to create, but I can't create the trolley cars. And we found out the trolley cars are really better to have anyway, and we still have them in Philadelphia. Not a lot of them, but it's and whenever I go down there, the big thing for me is to get on the trolley car and take a ride. And the ride is down memory lane because I want to feel what it was like. And in fact, one of the old trolley cars from Philadelphia is at the Museum of Transportation right here in Scottsville, I believe that's where it is. And so when I heard that, my spouse and I went out and rode that trolley car. And I talked to him about, what it was like to ride a trolley car like this. We got to know the motormen, who were the same motormen each day, so much so, I'm a twin. When Teddy and I would get on, we didn't have to pay fare. And we would stay up there and talk to the motormen on the trolley. It was a wonderful time, but things have changed. What we have here with the Book of Joy is yet another distillation regarding the human search for happiness and peace. And I say that because there's so much written and so many who are giving attention to this subject. As such, the book presumes to speak to each of us in our own time and in our own space about joy, the meaning of joy, and how we might achieve it. And that's a good book when it can speak to a variety of people in their own context. Our commentators who speak to us through the printed page are His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and Archbishop Emeritus of the Southern Africa Conference, Desmond Tutu. Both are renowned spiritual leaders, as you know. I need not tell you that. The Dalai Lama is from the Buddhist tradition, and Archbishop Tutu for the Christian tradition. Both of these men are in their 80s. Both have the experience of living in exile. The Dalai Lama is living in exile. Bishop Tutu did live in exile for a number of years. Both are Nobel Peace Prize recipients, but perhaps what qualifies these two great leaders to speak regarding the subject of joy is that they have both had a lifetime of trial, tribulation, victory, accomplishment, and perspectives that have allowed them to consider what the true foundation of joy might be. Both of these leaders are known to be joyful beings, and in this book, they take on the task of sharing their collective wisdom. The Dalai Lama and the Archbishop conceived of the book as a gift to the world, as a way to celebrate their birthdays. I just think that is so wonderful that that's how they framed it. And so for 5 days, they met in Dharamsala, India, the residence of the Dalai Lama, in exile. And during those 5 days, their co-writer is Douglas Abrams. And so the three voices comprise this book that we'll be reading. Abrams is the author and editor and literary agent for Desmond Tutu. His resume indicates that he's the founder and president of Idea Architects. And anybody who thinks and constructs ideas, it's right in my bailiwick. So Idea Architects is a creative book and media agency helping visionaries to create a wiser, healthier, and more just world. I just like him on the basis of what he's doing right there. Regarding the nature of the dialogue in this book, which the book is recording, the Dalai Lama was adamant about the importance of making sure that this was not a Buddhist book, that this was not a Christian book, but that it was a universal book supported not only by opinion or tradition, but by science. And so as you read the book, you certainly will hear the Buddhist perspective, you'll certainly hear the Christian perspective, but the wonderful thing is you hear both men searching for the common denominators that unite them. And then Douglas Abrams usually introduces the scientific perspective during the reading of the book. The progression, or the unfolding of the book, the progression of the book as it unfolds is filled with descriptive detail regarding those 5 days, the setting and the context of the dialogue. Also surrounding each topic area is a great deal of repartee between the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop. They obviously are friends. They've met on a number of occasions. And so there's a lot of humor that we experience. It's almost like sitting in the room, listening to them talk to each other, and in the Black tradition, run the dozens on each other. The descriptive information regarding context and the constant repartee between these two leaders, I must say, can be considered distracting if one wants to cut to the chase regarding the subject of joy. But there is I was talking to Donna, was it that I was talking to about the CD? Yes. There is a CD that she told me about today where you can listen to the book with 3 different voices with the accents of each. And I said, you know, this would be great, a great way to listen to the book, because one of the things that happens is the dialogue kind of gets embedded. You're wondering, oh, now who's speaking now? I have to go back and figure out who that was. And I found myself constantly rechecking to see who was saying what. So the repartee and the constant chatter between the two, I don't consider it to be a distraction, because the book does this. It allows us to sit in intimacy with these two great leaders, all the while being able to experience their joyousness and zest for life. That comes through. It is in the offhand repartee and friendly bantering that the readers are able to experience what a lifetime of crafted joy, listen to the word, a lifetime of crafted joy feels like, looks like, and how it sounds. So it's almost like the TV program when I was growing up where this voice said, "You are there." Well, you are there as you listen to them. Somewhat disconcerting for me is the fact that this book does not develop along linear lines where the reader is able to closely track the subject of joy as it unfolds in the book. Rather, the book is comprised of layering of ideas that are repetitious and that you come back to them at different levels. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just simply we have to understand that we're going to run into things that have been said previously. But after all, what we have here is a conversation, not a logically developed treatise on joy. And critical to the book is the fact that the commentators themselves, and this is the most important thing, are content for the book. They, by their lives, are joyous individuals. The book is divided into 3 major sections. The first section is the nature of true joy. The second section, the obstacles to joy. The third section, 8 pillars of joy. And I found that the third section really is a distillation of what has been poured out over the first 3 days of the dialogue between these two wonderful men. And then the book ends with actual exercises called joy practices. And these practices are based on one assumption of the book, that joy has a profound psychosomatic impact and that joy can be crafted into our lives so that it affects the mind, the body, and the spirit. The potentiality for joy is part of each person, we're given to understand. But it is a gift that must be stirred up, practiced, and made habitual in human lives. According to these two leaders, joy must be incubated, it must be birthed, it must be nurtured, and it must be matured. Now, there are some babies who are born and as babies they're really, really happy, but when they engage life, they have to do the same thing that anybody else does. I'm a twin. Teddy was always, smiling and, quiet, and I was born with a frown on my face. So I know that joy had to be incubated in me. The section of the book on joy practices may be more relevant to those who are in a search for joy. For others who've grown up with a backdrop of joy against which their lives have unfolded, the section on joy practices, from my perspective, was much less relevant to my needs, but it's worth reading because it does give you ideas about how to download joy into your physical being, and I think that's helpful for those of us who are achievement-driven and who are very, very busy in our lives. As I share some of the perspectives of the Book of Joy, I do it by sharing windows in my own life that were open as I journeyed through the book. Forgive me, I have been dealing with a cold, and it has been fine, but now it's decided to be part of this presentation. You never know, but I can't complain. Joy, 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 because that's a good thing, right? It means that the body is doing what it's supposed to do, and I'm going to need to get over it and embrace it. A good book, for me, is one that connects with my own experiences, and on the other hand, leads me to places in my own life hitherto unexplored. For years, when I taught my students, the majority of them would say that they hated history. I love history, and so I told them, I'm going to give you a key that may unlock history. I said, whenever I read anything, historical or whatever, I place myself in the context. I hear the sounds. I smell the smells. I'm there. I'm a part of it. And I did have some conversions where students come back and say, that's an amazing thing, I've begun to do that. And guess what, Dr. Johnson? I like history now. And this book certainly sent me hurling back into my own biography. Contemplating the concept of joy, I immediately thought of my grandfather's first cousin, Cousin Viola. Before the Depression, Cousin Viola had owned a costuming business with a white gentleman in the theater district of Philadelphia, an unusual accomplishment for that time. Like so many, she was wiped out by the Depression. I came to know her in the 1950s, and by the 1960s, she was living in a nursing home because she was a diabetic and had lost her legs. When you would ask Cousin Viola how she was feeling, and of course she was part of the patrician Philadelphia tradition with the clipped Yankee accent and very proper, and you'd ask her how she was doing without her legs, laying here in the nursing home, and she would say, I would be less than an ingrate if I did not praise the Lord. What an answer for this woman to have shared with us. I would certainly say that Cousin Viola found lasting happiness in a changing world. While the title of the book is simple, it is deceptively so. What we learn from our commentators is that joy is convoluted, multifaceted, encrusted with cultural oxidation, which requires lifting off. It is so that we can live a joyful life. One could even say that joy in our time is countercultural. And according to the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop, it really requires one to annihilate the acquired cultural self to discover the essential biological self, which we are told is really wired to want to do good, to be good, and to live joyfully. So it's working back to who our essential selves are. In the section of the book, The Nature of True Joy, we are led to understand that the great barrier or monster consuming joy is materialism, which is insufficient to tackle human problems. A premise of this section is that most people never pay attention to the ultimate source of a happy life, which is inside, not outside. It's internal, not external. And the Archbishop and the Dalai Lama certainly, by their lives and by the trials that they've gone through and the great things they've done and the joy that they have, prove the point that joy is generated from within. Paradoxically, both the Archbishop and the Dalai Lama have much to say about the fact that suffering, and listen to this, is often the fertile soil for the discovery of joy. Suffering is often the fertile soil for the discovery of joy. I have found that in my own life. None of us want to suffer, but suffering is part of the human condition. And if it is, they are leading us into thinking about how we can find joy as a result of the suffering. These two great spiritual leaders discussed their belief that suffering and tragedy lead to the birth of empathy and compassion. And being empathetic and compassionate is a source of true joy. An example offered by Bishop Tutu to support the tragedy to joy principle, and one of the sections of the book, it just occurred to me as I'm standing here having to do this, was humility. And Bishop Tutu must have ordered this for me so that I would be humble as I'm doing this, okay? Because I would not have chosen this. So I'm still struggling with the joy and all of this business with my nose, okay? It too is content for the presentation, okay? He offers the example of Nelson Mandela, who spent 28 years in prison. Bishop Tutu describes him as a bloodthirsty person when he began his imprisonment, vengeful, angry. But after his 28 years, he came out a compassionate, magnanimous personality with the capacity to put himself in the shoes of the other. During his years in prison and with his attendant suffering, and he suffered, joy was incubated and birthed in him. Now, I'm not going to go out and look for suffering so that I can be more joyous, but believe me, it comes. And so it'll find you. You don't have to find it. And can we come out of it joyfully? Regarding the nature of joy, our commentators are clear that it is not an absence of suffering, and that suffering incubates joy. But what about the pain of suffering? It is their position that the pain of suffering gives us a wider perspective on the world, a macro perspective on what other people experience, that we're just not focused on our own personal tragedies and pains, and that it allows us, as we focus on a wider perspective, it reduces our anxiety and worry about our own suffering. And further, they believe that our experiences with suffering can either do one of two things: embitter us or ennoble us. And in the case of these two men, it has ennobled them. Joy is a choice, and that's the other thing. In this matter of what suffering can do, these two great leaders believe that when it comes to joy, we do have choices to make. One, and this is a thought of mine, I believe that this crossroads of whether we take the high ground road of ennoblement or the road of bitterness may not seem like a choice at all, because evil circumstances, have a compelling energy such as that they carry us away into a vortex of turmoil, of emotional chaos, and we find ourselves in a place where we never intended to go or be. And I'm sure that there are many of you here who can attest to that, because I've experienced that. And yet, these two leaders demonstrate from the pages of their personal suffering that there are always choices that can be made about how we're going to deal with the suffering and who we're going to be coming out of it. We have a lot more power than we thought we had. And we have it because it is a choice, and we're already wired with the mechanisms to be joyful. As human beings, we always have control of our inner spiritual lives. And these do elaborate how we view external circumstances. Examples are offered in this book of persons who were able to move from bitterness to transcendence regarding their suffering. One was a Chinese man who spent 18, he was a Tibetan man, I believe, who spent 18 years of hard labor in a Siberia-like exile. His transcendence came when he made the decision to practice a discipline of praying for the guards, who were his imprisoners, who used daily a combination of Soviet-like, Japanese-like, and Chinese-style torture. And yet he made a decision that he was going to be praying for them, and he credits that with bringing him out on the other side of this with a joyous spirit. Now, I'm not hurrying to try that out, but I'm telling you, it's an amazing thing. And then Douglas Abrams gives the example of Ray Hinton on page 245, who spent 30 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He was convicted with trumped-up charges, and after he was finally released and exonerated, a 60-minute interviewer asked him whether he was angry at those who had put him in jail. And his response was that he had forgiven them. And the interviewer, we are told, incredulously asked, "But they took 30 years of your life. How can you not be angry?" And here's the profound response that Hinton gave. "If I'm angry and unforgiving, they will have taken the rest of my life." So we can make choices even in those kind of things. Here's another window into my life here. Before I came here, I taught at Southern Seminary in Kentucky. I gave up tenure to go there because I was still working on my doctorate, and tenure was hard won, but they promised me that they would give it to me when I finished my PhD. During the 40 years I was there, the first two, there was a conservative takeover, a different president who said, "I didn't promise that to you, I refused to give it to you," and furthermore, they let me know they wanted me to go because as an African American, I didn't fit in there. I became so bitter. I became so sorrowful that my bitterness was actually killing me. And so the choice that I made was, because I couldn't control the circumstances, but one night in the middle of the night, I woke up, and it fills me even now, and I cried out, "Lord, take this bitterness away from me. It's killing me. I can't live like this." And it was gone. And I was able to live in peace. And the thing that I found out was that that was not my total story. There was another chapter, and it's been here. And these have been the best years of my teaching career, the best years of my life, living in this context. And I might as well get this off my chest right now. I love the weather here. I absolutely love the weather here. I'm in my element. Now, if I've made enemies with that, I'm joyful. Read the book. We are not given a definition of joy in this book per se. Our commentators discuss what joy is not. It differs from pleasure and happiness, which has to do with external things and the sensate. We are told where joy may be found. Joy, we're told, is rooted in generosity of spirit. It is discovered through the human proclivity for cooperation, compassion, and generosity. We are also informed that exploring joy is nothing less than exploring what makes human experience satisfying. Here's my thought. It may well be that joy is elusive in the times that we live because we live in a human experience denying culture. There's denial of suffering, of spirituality. There's denial of true relationship and denial of faith. We think about virtual relationships. These are the very areas that form the foundation of joy, according to our commentators. So that's the challenge, how to find joy in that kind of a culture. And then the book moves to the obstacles of joy. And this is only a sampling. I mean, I could never really convey the entire contents of this book in this presentation. The listed obstacles to joy in the book are fear, stress, anxiety, 1. 2, frustration and anger. 3, sadness and grief. 4, despair. The world is in such turmoil. 5, loneliness, a perennial problem. 6, envy, which is very much a part of the material culture that we live in. 7, suffering and adversity. And 8, illness and death. And I see that there are more of you here who are in my age range or older who are dealing with the challenges of illness. And, how do we view this time of life? I've had a hip replacement, a knee replacement. I've had lots and lots of surgeries. And yet when people ask me about my life at this time and being retired, I tell them these are the best years of my life. And they are the best years of my life. I treasure them, and for a lot of reasons, because I know my time is short, but I treasure them because I know so much more now than I did before, and I know the value of what I have, and I know how to value the days that are in front of me, and I know how to live in the present moment. So these are the best years of my life, and that's one way that I find joy. What sets these two men apart regarding the obstacles of joy is that, if you remember the list, they embrace the reality of each of those obstacles. They embrace the reality of loneliness, of envy, of suffering and adversity, and they understand it from within. They understand that the listed obstacles are simply a part of human experience. What they would tell us when we embrace the reality of these obstacles to joy is that when we embrace them, we are ready then to explore how joy might truly be found in the human condition. That is, not escape, but embracing, not living with the burden of these obstacles, not living with the burden of these obstacles, but looking for the blessing in each of these obstacles. And I'm fascinated by paradoxes, and I'm always thinking about, okay, this is the burden. What's the blessing? Where's the blessing in this? My spouse has Alzheimer's. And there are many people who, of course, want to encourage me, and sometimes I get pity and sorrow. And I say to them, life is exciting because I'm able to see how the Lord gives blessings, new blessings every day in the midst of Alzheimer's with Bob, with taking care of him, having the privilege of taking care of him, and to be able to continue to enjoy who he is and him enjoy who I am. So I look for the blessings, and the blessings are there, and I look for the victories each day. And I refuse to mine away my present joy thinking about who he used to be, what he used to be able to do. And of course, in doing that, he often surprises me about what he is doing. For example, I just can't resist this little example. Bob is the dishwasher, the sous chef in our house. Cooking is my avocation, those of you who know me. And he has continued to wash the dishes, but trying to find where to put things is a tremendous challenge for him. And so things are put away wrong. And I have a kitchen that has more equipment in it than a restaurant because cooking is my avocation. And I might not use a particular utensil but once in the year, but I know where it is. So I used to try to work with Bob about putting it away. I gave that up. I used to say, leave it out, I'll put it away. He forgets, and he'll put it away, and it's put away wrong. But what I have found is he has a code. There are 3 different places where he's going to put things. And I have become so good at his code and breaking it that I know if I can't find a particular fork or spoon that I want, and it's not in the place where it belongs, it's in 2 other places. And by gosh, and by golly, and by gum, I find it every time. Now, once in a while, there's an errant utensil or something that has disappeared. And then it appears, very strangely, as if it has a life of its own. Okay. Rebecca, where are you? What's my time frame here?
A few more minutes, and then we'll do some questions.
A few more minutes, like 5?
We good? 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, because it's more than I can present here. Here's another thought. They talked about connection and community, and that what we really need and are looking for in this search for joy is love and connection. My thought is here that love found in community and connection to others are best demonstrated by providing work that is meaningful for people. This, in turn, provides workers with an aegis through which they might give meaning to the community through their work. During my master's years at the University of Pennsylvania, we had a student organization called the Alliance of Black Social Work Students. This group operated from a profound sense of community. Out of this came a commitment to see that each of us peers was successful at the University of Penn. And believe me, we got each other through. On the other hand, the doctoral program in the same school, which I moved into, had a culture of pitting students against each other based on the ethos of competition, which unfortunately is much too familiar. I found myself thriving with joy realized at the master's level, and at the doctoral level, I languished. I took a leave of absence and never went back to the doctoral program after my first year. Anger and frustration are also identified as obstacles to joy, and I'll stop with this one after I give this example. The window that was opened for me in this material on anger and frustration is a vignette from an in-service training at the agency where I worked after I graduated from graduate school. Lou Carter, a then professor at Penn School of Social Work, asked us as a group to think about a relationship with an individual which we found difficult. For me, it was my relationship with my father. I shared with the group that my father loved me, but he did not like me, and that all my growing up I had been deeply uncomfortable with this man. Professor Carter's response to this blew my mind. He responded, "And think about how uncomfortable your dad feels in this relationship." Well, I had never before thought about that. I was the victim, not him. But when I began to explore how he might feel in our relationship, it was the point at which my lifelong anger towards him began to dissolve. And it was the point at which I began to gain the courage to take him on about our relationship and to eventually allow the two of us to find joy in our relationship, and such that when he died, just about every issue that we had was finished. There was no unfinished business. There was just one thing that was unfinished, and I could not help him with that. And he was able to then be fully who he was. In fact, I remember this poignant episode, because when you give up anger, and the bishop and archbishop talk about that, it leads to unexpected gifts. I was standing in the kitchen of my aunt's house in Florida. We had read in the paper where a parent had been convicted of child abuse. She had taken her hand and slapped the kid. And my father said, "I would never slap my children like that." Well, in the fit of anger, my father did slap me, and he did put all of his 200 plus pounds behind it, and it was the most painful thing that I had ever endured. And so I said, "I beg to differ with you, Daddy." I said, "Here's what happened." And that man took his adult son, put his arms around me, and kissed me and said, "Daddy is sorry." You're talking about healing and joy. It can come when we begin to deal with what we have on the inside. And that's I think, describes the perspective of these men. I've gone over my time, and I'm supposed to open up for questions. Thank you. Yeah, I'll stay up here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for that wonderful review. It brought joy to all of us, I'm sure. We're going to, I think we'll do the drawing now in case any of you need to go. And if you can stay, Dr. Johnson is able to take questions and give answers. So may I ask you to do the drawing for the
Brand new
copy?
Cadillac.
Oh, how about that?
What you want?
If you are not the winner, we do have 5 copies at the circulation desk. So if you rush right out with your library card and ask at the circulation desk for a copy, if you're one of the top 5, you can get it. I also just want to mention before we read the winner, if you would like to continue this discussion, next Wednesday, May 3rd, this book is going to be featured in the Subject to Change book discussion group. And that's at the Arts and Literature Division. And that will be from noon to 1 o'clock on Wednesday, May 3rd. So if this review has inspired you and you'd like to discuss this a little more, you can do that next Wednesday. So who is our winner?
Our winner is Chris McGovern.
Chris.
Where's Chris?
She's right here.
Right there.
Terrific. Thank you. All right.
I'll get that $20 bill at the end of the
I'll bring that right over, Chris. And now we can take a few questions.
I want to thank you for coming. Questions? Yes.